So yes, there are good cops. I personally know good cops. I served with good cops. I know some of the most resilient people I have ever met are police officers. However, there are those who don't speak out against the injustices that they see within their departments. And then when they do speak out against them, they get fired, or there is a ramification behind them speaking out. They won't get promoted. They don't go, to specialized units within their department. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. So when we talk about defunding the police, we cannot do that. I am more in favor for demilitarizing our police because we have a military. Okay, so our police officers shouldn't be equipped with MRAPs and up armored vehicles. However, unless they're on the SWAT team or their quick reaction force, or whatever people want to call it, the SRT, if they're in that unit, then the vehicles, that's fine, but I mean, they still need their shields, but we're seeing, and it's extraordinary how easy we were quick to militarize our police, but yet we couldn't get PPE for our frontline workers who are still battling and helping those with the coronavirus. So COVID-19 is still going on, and we're not seeing at the rate that we need to see the PPE and the masks and the ventilators, and it's crazy. But yet we have protesters who are rightfully executing, or not executing, but they're, assembling, and they're doing these amazing things in small, tiny towns to the biggest cities we've seen. I mean, New York City. 50 states, all 50 states have had protesters and rallies against the injustice that happened to George. However, the response that the police, provided was exactly what people of color are trying to tell the whole society, or all of society. Like, this is how the police treat us. Like, you have to understand that this is a normal thing for us. That's not normal, and you should never have to live in a state of constant fear when you walk out your door, or even sleeping in your own home. Men and women of color are getting murdered at the hands of the police at a higher rate than those who are white, but those who are white are committing crimes against police at a higher rate than those of color. That doesn't, I mean, it's so. When I talk about the reallocating or the redistribution of funding, I'm talking about, hey, look, this police force has $250 million for its fiscal year. So that's 12 months is in a fiscal year. It usually starts in October to the next October. So they have $250 million they're getting, they're getting from the federal government or the state, whatever. $250 million, that's a lot of money. So where does that go? Usually to militarize the police. Not in all cases, so just hear me out. It would be nice to see, hey, throw $100 million to backlogged cases, or, promote those who are working the beat to detective or sergeant so they can start really investigating crimes, and then we can close the gap of unsolved crimes dating back, decades. So we have a lot of backlogged rape kits that are sitting in warehouses in every state. Hey, how about you allocate some funding to that, and then we can test all the kits. Let's completely do it. I know that they did a national backlogging thing a couple years ago. However, we still have untested kits that need to be tested, so that there goes some money to that. And then we have homicide detectives who've been working cold cases. Hey, add more money to that. Like, let's start doing this, and let's start getting more computers and hiring more people, to help. As in, they don't have to work the beat, but we can get, hey, people who they can be licensed to, carry that firearm on them, and they go through the same physical fitness test, but they're at a higher education or what have you, or they have more experience in this area, and then they can start, you know, try to close these cold cases or these active current cases. And then you have, you know, mental health officers. So I don't know if every city has them. I know Austin has a couple of them. And it's awesome that they have these mental health officers. However, they're still in full uniform, and as a mental health professional, I know that when I called the mental health officer in Austin regarding a client that the law office next to us had a client that was in crisis. So I de-escalated her. I started the situation. I started getting her to talk about things, looking positive. She was very suicidal. She had a plan. We called the mental health officers, and 2 regular officers responded to the call, which was fine. So I got consent from the individual to call the mental health officers. There was 1. So I'm following guidelines, and I'm like, hey, you know, we're going to have this officer come and talk to you. They're a mental health care officer, so they're going to understand this, you know, duressing time, and you're going to be able to talk to them and then see your options. So this lady had a horrible work accident, and then workman's comp wasn't paying out enough, so she had to leave the facility that she was in because she was in constant pain. She got a TBI, and there's a lot of other things that was happening. So we called the mental health officers, and I'm sitting and talking to this lady. I'm getting her to talk, and she was laughing, and I get her in this really good mood, and then 2 officers show up. So I go and talk to them. I'm like, hey, okay, which one of you is the mental health officer? Like, oh, well, we were just responding to the call to make sure it wasn't bad. And I'm like, it's not bad. We're here. We're in a law office, but I'm here, and this is what I do, and this is what I've got, and here X, Y, and Z, and we get all the information. And so before the officers come into the office where I was sitting with this individual, I tell her, I'm like, hey, they look intimidating, but they're not. They're just here to, you know, ask a couple questions, a routine, and then, you know, the mental health officer will be here soon. They were just called to make sure that, you know, we didn't need any help. You didn't need any help. And I had to like really put it down, because the second she saw the police, she got really nervous. And it wasn't because she was breaking the law. It was just that initial contact with police. A lot of people get very nervous. And so that's where I was like, hey, well, they just look intimidating, but they're really not. And I, you know, got her back down to a baseline. I would say her baseline was at like a 5, from a 10 being the absolute worst, where she was going to jump out the window. I got her back to about a 5. And she was talking. She was talking to the police officers. She gave them her name and, you know, all of this stuff. And then they had 2 mental health crisis workers come out. And if those are the best that you got, that was awful. They were so bad. It was redundant questions, asking all these things, and then they were like, well, that's okay if you're feeling that way. Everybody feels that way. And they were just reassuring her, which was good, but they were reassuring the wrong things. And then the lady was trying to make jokes, and one was an intern, and one was the main person in the social worker. She didn't get the joke, but me and the intern were laughing at it, and we're like, oh, it's a joke. If you didn't get it, you know, ignore it. It's fine, but it's good that you're joking. And then the mental health officer comes in, and then you have the paramedics, and it's just this huge scene in this law office. And I'm just sitting with this lady, and she was like, can you hold my hand the whole time? So I was holding her hand, and I'm like, this is fine. They're here for you because they care about you. And I'm telling her, and she was in her 60s, and she spoke broken English, and she was in so much pain. Like, she was shaking in pain, like trying to pull her hair out. And it was so sad, because like she just needed someone to listen to her. Her plan could have been executed that day. So the mental health officer gets there, and again, were the redundant questions, which they, you know, the responding officer should have told them all of her information. And then she wanted to go in the ambulance, and then the mental health crisis workers were like, well, that's going to cost money, and I don't know if you have it. So maybe you could just take a ride with us. So she assumed, because they said take a ride with us, she really thought that she would be going in their car, but what she really wanted was to go with the EMTs, and they were like, yeah, that's fine. And I was like, hey, get on, you know, I'll walk with you down to, you know, to the ambulance, and here's my card, like, please call me, make sure that, you know, I wanted to know that she was okay. So they got her to agree to go with them, not the EMTs, but the mental health crisis workers. And I was like, okay, well, we're good here. And she was like, we're good. I gave her a hug, and she's like, thank you so much. And I was like, I wish the best for you. Like, it was eye-opening to see, you know, I've never actually had to call a mental health officer. So that was the first time I've seen all of the steps that it took. Well, they winded up putting her in handcuffs and in the back of a police cruiser. She wanted to go in the ambulance. She wasn't going to hurt herself, or like herself anymore. Like, she didn't have the means, that, like, her plan, she didn't have the means to do it anymore. And the mental health care workers said that they were going to, you know, hey, come take a ride with us. So she thought she would be riding with them. No, they put her in the back of the patrol car with handcuffs. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. And they were like, oh, it's standard procedure. And I was like, I understand that, but I literally had to, like, talk her down from just talking to you guys in uniform. And now she's in the back of a police cruiser. Like, but she was fine. She was calm. She understood. She wanted to be going to one of the hospitals. So I hope everything winded up being okay for her. So this is where, no, social workers cannot do that job. They cannot handle it. I had a client who confined me to his house. I had a client who was trafficking his wife, was very angry, hostile. He was on every type of drug you could think of. He was slamming drugs. It was a lot. And every time, like, the people who are saying that they want to defund the police are the same exact people who were calling the police every time they saw this guy. No. So it was me and two other colleagues of mine. One is an LCDC, so a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and then another one who was working for our job program, Black, Latino, and then me, a woman, both males. And we were being fine, just de-escalating the situation, and they just kept calling the police. Well, 2 hours later, the police showed up, and I let them know what happened, and it was fine, whatever. But mental health care providers cannot, they don't have the capacity, and if they do, they need to go through proper training to not just mentally de-escalate the situation, but if you can physically handle the situation. Because a lot of people are like, well, I can handle this situation, and no, you can't handle that situation. Like, I've seen some of you in progress, and it doesn't work that way. Like, if you are against weapons of any kind, meaning just pepper spray, or a knife or a taser or a gun, how are you supposed to de-escalate a situation? You don't know if the person's using substances or if they're actually having a mental health crisis, because those can mimic one another, or it can be at the same exact time while they're still on substances, they can be having a mental health crisis. So having police officers who are very knowledgeable in that aspect, it is huge. So allocating funds to mental health officers would be better for the community, not only because it would show that, hey, it's okay to ask for help. We're going to be here. They need to be plain clothed. Yeah, they can have a weapon on them. I don't care about that because they're officers, but they need to be plain clothed, because that initial reaction that people get when they see a police officer, like, I don't know if you've ever been pulled over, but I've been pulled over for speeding like 4 over, and I'm shaken at initial contact, and then eventually it goes away. But some people don't have that because they haven't had that luxury, that they don't have to worry about, oh, well, they're not going to kill me, or they're not going to see me as a threat because of the color of my skin. So just one, mental health as a whole needs to be revamped. Also, in a systematic approach to officers. It shouldn't be a stigma. Like, the military is getting better, and people are more receptive to receiving mental health treatment now in the military. However, before, you could get kicked out of the military for just saying they need to see mental health. So I'm sure the stigma is still alive in a lot of law enforcement departments, like the police departments. No, end that stigma now. I mean, police have a high suicide rate. Obviously, they're eating their gun for a reason. So how about we start talking instead of saying, no, we can't, no, oh, you're going to go see mental health. Well, we're going to write that in your, your file, and then promotions and things like that get sidelined and the morale gets low, and then that's a high stressor, and then they're stressed and they go home and they have DV rates pretty high for a profession, or a suicide rate. And no, I mean, these are people who carry a badge there to protect and serve. But if their mental health is not, like their mental fitness is not at top notch, we're going to have a lot of issues. And we're already seeing those issues being played out on social media. So like the intent or the frustration, I watched a video of an officer who was clearly in duress. Like I hope she's getting the help that she needs, but she put a video about how McDonald's her McMuffin, they gave her coffee, but she was scared to eat. Okay, I get that. Cops are under the microscope right now, and it would be scary to know that, hey, I'm leaving my house, wearing my uniform, and I could be shot. That's the point of what people of color are trying to tell you. That's what they see. That's their daily life that they live through. So you're having a meltdown over a McMuffin. Clearly there's something else. You're completely fatigued. You need to go see someone. And I hope that was your cry for help, without really seeing that there was something like the first thing I was like, there is an underlying issue behind why she's upset about a McMuffin, because I've waited 15 minutes for 2 Happy Meals and I did not cry about it. And I think the stigma with mental health needs to be completely looked at, and not in a negative light. People need to go and see. Everyone should see someone to talk unbiasedly, where they don't know you or your personal life, but they just know you at what you tell them or whatever, and then they can, assess and address the issues that, arise. And I think all police officers need to be seen, or to see someone in the mental health community. Also, with that, there shouldn't be the fear of reprisal, or what they're saying is getting out. Hey, like, you're a police officer, you're a mandatory reporter anyways. So if you're having thoughts of harming yourself or others, you should probably go and see someone, because you would call, or like you would have to call CPS if it's a child or an adult saying this. Like, if it was anybody else but you would have to deal with it, but it's you. So since you wear that badge, you have to be this mentally resilient person. You don't have to be. It's okay to need help and to go seek that help. And that's where these departments need to understand that, hey, if you have an officer with more than one use of force complaint, maybe they need to go and check out their mental, their mental and overall fitness, to see what can happen. Maybe they just need, a week paid time off, to just, reset themselves, instead of constantly being bombarded with these crisis calls. Because if you think about it, people call the police, if you're not looking at like the Amy Coopers or the Karens of society, like, people call the police when they're in extreme crisis. So they're constantly in a mode where they're having to calm things down. So I truly believe the number one thing that needs to be taken into account are mental health officers and how they approach society as a mental health. They need to look at like how Switzerland does it, and they're like in an ambulance, and they're officers, and they know how to de-escalate the situation, and they can do it lawfully and take into account one's mental health or substance use. And then my next video will be talking about how these different departments can be start implementing it in different ways, and how I would train a department that asked me to come in on various topics. So I hope you appreciate my story and just one thing of the redistribution, reallocation of funding instead of defunding the police. So wait for my next video, and thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a great day.